Oh God, Dane.
Final Fantasy XIII. Do we still hate this game? I can't quite tell anymore. It felt like most people liked it when it came out. Then like 5 years later, it was the worst game ever. Now it's, I don't know, maybe bad? I'm not sure. Here's hoping Square publishes a remastered trilogy so we can start the conversation up once more. For me personally though, it's a pretty bad game that has an almost perfect battle system that you really can't experience till the final few hours. But has an epic female protagonist that absolutely kicks ass. And this guy here. But a chocobo lives in the stereotypical depiction of a black man's afro, and that's cool. Alright, enough dicking around. Today we're making a tier list of every character's paradigm shift and figuring out which is best. Paradigms are classes with 6 variations. You have the physical attacking commando, the magic wielding ravager, the defensive sentinel, the healing medic, the debuffing saboteur, and my personal favorite, the buffing synergist. I mentioned that Final Fantasy XIII's battle system is near perfect, and I stand by that, mainly because of the stagger mechanic. You see, every enemy has a large amount of HP, and regular physical attacks won't do much until they're staggered. A standard battle would start with a Ravager hitting the enemy with magic while a Sentinel draws their attacks, and a Synergist buffs the party. Once the enemy is staggered, you might switch all 3 characters to the Commando paradigm in order to lay down a boatload of damage. Either way, every class is useful and balanced, but not every character is useful in it. Oh, I should probably mention that there are 6 party members in this game. With 6 paradigms each, that means that you have a total of 36 builds, with an incredible assortment of party combinations to choose from. Again, once you've progressed through most of the game. Anyway, I think I've talked enough. Let's get started with the here. Vanille, as a synergist, lacks this paradigm's most important spell, haste, and what other spells she has are situational at best. Due to Vanille's incredibly slow attack animation and terrible strength, she makes for one of the worst commandos in the game. Sazh is the worst character in Final Fantasy XIII due to terrible stats and the slowest attack animations. He really only does one paradigm well, and we'll get there later, but he may be one of the worst saboteurs in the game, lacking most important spells. Sazh is also a terrible medic, with the same spells as Snow but a lower magic stat and again, terribly slow animations. Because Sazh doesn't have Reprieve and Metaguard, he may also be the worst Sentinel in the game. Hope is also a terrible Sentinel with the same unique build as Lightning, but he sucks at it. Lightning, unfortunately, makes it to our tier as a Saboteur. This is mainly due to lacking any and all useful skills and being outclassed by all other characters. The final member of the tier is Fang as a medic. She has a few good skills, but absolutely no magic stat to back them up. The low tier. Hope holds up as a commando only against enemies weak to magic, as his boomerangs suck, but with Ruin he does alright. Sazh makes a low tier commando due to his speed and terrible stats and lack of a launch attack. That being said, his blitz can be effective in certain situations. Lightning is your early game medic, but by the end game, she'll be outshined by so many others. Snow makes his first appearance on this list with his Synergist class, which is passable. Alright, because this list is pretty big, we're going to break up the mid tier into 2 parts, so let's get started with the lower mid tier. Surprising as it is, Vanille actually makes a decent Sentinel as she has both better HP and defense than Hope, and also gains the Reprieve spell, which helps in late game battles. Fang isn't the first you think of when it comes to the Synergist class, but if you're willing to put in the time, she isn't too bad. That is if you're controlling her. If not, her AI sucks. If the enemy is weak to Daze, then Snow's Saboteur can be almost god tier, as it's the single best Daze spammer in the game. If not, then he's not worth having around. Snow's medic is also pretty decent, as he has both okayish magic and incredible defense and HP, making him the tankiest healer in the game. The final member of the lower mid tier is Lightning's Sentinel. Unlike all the characters, she is built as an evasion tank. This makes her situationally useful. Alright, let's move on to the upper mid tier. Our first Ravager appears on this list as it's one of the most useful and game-breaking classes in the game, and Fang does this paradigm fairly well as it's less about the magic stat and magic damage and more about chaining, and Fang is one of the best, though you unlock this paradigm so late and it takes so much work that you might just pass on it. Vanille's Ravager is unfortunately plagued by her terrible speed and lack of vigor, though her magic stat tries to make up for that. Unfortunately, she's one of the worst chainers due to these reasons. Hope makes an average saboteur as he is best suited to debuffing mobs. The glaring issue is when he goes up against bosses and lacks single target spells, making him less than ideal. Snow also makes a passable, maybe slightly above average commando. Fang blows him out of the water, but Lightning only beats him out if built correctly. The final member of the upper mid tier is Fang's Sentinel. She's a slightly downgraded version of Snow's Sentinel, which still lands her in the upper tiers. The top tier. Fang makes one of the best saboteurs in the game. She has fast animations, almost all important skills, and the Pandora Spear. If she had death, she would compete for best saboteur in the game. Hope's Ravager makes the third best chainer in the game with the highest magic stat of any character. Slap on Last Resort and you have a decent endgame mage. Hope is also a decent endgame medic as well. Again, because of his high magic stat, his heals hit hard. If he had better survivability, he might have beaten out Vanille. Lightning is the second best commando in the game. Her high speed, mid strength, and Axis Blade make her devastating in the right situations. Lightning also makes a damn good synergist when push comes to shove. Though she struggles with animations, she does get the majority of the spells. Just be ready to grind. Saz makes it to the top tier barely due to being the single best early and mid game synergist. His weapons are built for this paradigm and accessing haste early on is a lifesaver. But in the end game, due to Hope's better versatility, he'll most likely be replaced. The God tier. Snow and Lightning compete for best Ravager in the game, and to be honest, it's really hard to decide who is better as they both excel here. Snow is the faster spellcaster with wicked fast animations, but Lightning has better equipment and, for what it's worth, better stats. Snow is the best Sentinel and there's just no contest. There isn't another character better suited to tank attacks, and as he makes a decent AI partner, this is a very good thing, as the developers seem to overlook the fact that the controlled party member dying leads to a game over, so you probably don't want that person to be your tank. Hope is an average synergist until Chapter 12. Then he becomes the best, as he both is equal to Saz in every way other than acquiring vigilance, and also makes a top tier medic and Ravager. Vanille is the best medic in the game as she has the stats and skills required while also being a decently tanky character. Vanille is also the best saboteur in the game as she is the only character that gains the most broken spell in Final Fantasy XIII, Death. Though she does lack the useful slow spell, you just can't pass on this absurdly abusable late game tactic. And the final member of the God tier and final member of this list is Fang's Commando. She doesn't just have the highest damage potential of any character, but she also has all the skills required to obliterate any boss. Oh, and don't forget her busted skill Highwind. Today is the day I put a cap on the Final Fantasy XIII trilogy by ranking all monsters in Final Fantasy XIII-2. Thank you to my Patreon Pro member, Giovanni Morales, for requesting this list. That was the last bit of motivation I needed to cap off a project I've had in the works for nearly a year. The story of Final Fantasy XIII-2 follows two protagonists, Sarah and Noelle. In battle, these two are permanent party members capable of switching to different paradigms. Noelle is best as a commando, sentinel, and synergist, while Sarah works best as a saboteur, ravager, and medic. This leaves the third party member. You can have 3 monsters, each representing a paradigm, slotted into this third spot. These monsters range in usefulness, some being best for battle, while others are used outside of battle for certain events, such as chocobo racing. Today we're asking ourselves which monsters are best for your playthrough. We're considering stats, availability, usage as either a permanent party member or as an extremely useful infusion fodder, and finally the all-important feral links. If you're new to the channel, why don't you subscribe and become a member of the LCD family? Also, if you're looking for a good drinking game, Take a drink every time I mispronounce one of these names.
Son of a...
Alright, let's pause for a minute. This is easily one of the longest lists I have ever researched, and during my time, I realized something important about this title. That is, that half the monsters aren't worth talking about. So here's a list of all the monsters I'm putting in the unranked tier. They're here because they're either simple fusion fodder, obtained so late in the game that it doesn't matter, are surpassed by others on this list, or I simply couldn't find enough data on them to place them in a tier. Anyway, we'll skip this tier and move to the low tier. The low tier is mainly comprised of monsters who are very niche, or happen to have important traits to pass on. I'll be moving through these pretty quick since we have so many. Poo-Poo's main reason for existing is its ability to increase item drop rate via its Feral Link. Valfador is an awesome Ravager that is obtained in the late to post game because he's one of the hardest DLC battles in the game. Nekton is a decent spellcaster and has the unique ability to cast slow via its Feral Link. Gigantar is a half-decent synergist with a fast execution speed. Narashima is one of the few monsters that can have the full ATB gauge of 6 segments. Amanjaku is awesome for infusion as they get all the end spells, which boost damage potential for other monsters on this list. Thexteron is a cost-effective synergist used often in the mid-game. Gandax, Feral Behemoth, and Proto-Behemoth are decent monsters for your mid to late game builds. Gahongus is the earliest monster you'll encounter with the Faith and Bravery abilities. Albino Lobo, if found early, has great stats that stay paced throughout your entire playthrough. Apkalu and Swamp Monk are also decent mid-game monsters. Cactuar is a perfect counter to the side quest boss Yomi. Ultros is good, but too many other synergists blow him out of the water. Orion is a lesser version of Dragoon and has a short stay as your team's commando. Lancer is one of the most cost-effective sentinels, learning important skills like improved guard and improved ward. Gilgamesh, like Valfador, is a difficult late-game DLC boss who has some novel usage. Alright, we're going to split the mid-tier up into 2 sections, so let's start with the lower mid-tier. Viking is one of the best saboteurs through the early and mid-game with skills unavailable to Sarah and Noah. Don Tomberry is an amazing commando with the unfortunate passive of always being poisoned. Typhon is better than Ultros and works great for farming purposes. Cacturama's Feral Link casts re-raise on the party and is all around a decent medic. Apotamkin is a rare drop, but easily will be your best monster in the early game if acquired. Bookaboo Ace has an awesome Feral Link and makes for a great infusion monster for multiple reasons. Bookaboo is almost exclusively used for the ability Gil Finder 2 and will help you increase your gil in battle. Dendrobium is a cheap alternative to better saboteurs like Necrosis or Black Chocobo. Alright, that wraps up our lower mid tier. Let's move on to the upper mid tier. Amador is a great DLC monster who excels at fighting aerial enemies and disrupting attacks. Debris is almost as good as Cloudburst with half damage to all physical and elemental attacks. Chelicerata has the improved debuffing passive. Navidon is a lesser silver chocobo with better tanking abilities. Pulse Gladiator is a slightly better version of Navidon, capable of resisting physical and magical damage. Flanator is a top tier mid-game healer that is only surpassed by medics like the white and green chocobo. Caterpillar is the only monster with the passive resist elements plus 30%, which makes it important for infusions. Haguma is a very rare monster, but if required, it's the 3rd best healer in the game. White Chocobo is the 2nd best healer in the game, with the only reason it fell behind the Green Chocobo as being that its Feral Link is physical based and thus very ineffective. Black Chocobo requires a long-term investment, but if you do so, it will tie with the next 2 monsters on this list. Necrosis is the same as Black Chocobo, but is the only monster with the passive Resilience plus 40%, making it extremely viable as your main saboteur. Jill Nabat is hot. Jill is a DLC saboteur that peaks early but has some amazing niche uses like stun-locking enemies. Unfortunately, saboteurs all fall short on this list as its paradigm is almost always dominated by Sarah. The top tier. Tonberry dishes out incredible damage as a commando. Pulse Knight is your early game sentinel with the plus 25% HP passive that makes it a key infusion fodder throughout the entire game. Red Chocobo is the 2nd best Chocobo commando next to the Golden Chocobo and can easily be the mainstay on your team. Bunker Beast is tied for best sentinel in the late and post game. If infused with Metagard, it will be immune to all ailments and be able to tank almost every single attack in the game. Snow's greatest barrier is his stupidly high HP boss battle, but if acquired, Snow has awesome stats and incredibly high HP, making him one of the best sentinels in the game. Goblin Chieftain lacks the HP of Snow, but has the Pharaoh Link that buffs the entire party. Since the Sentinel paradigm is hardly required, having one that can buff the party ends up being one of the best strategies. The biggest reason why Twilight Odin didn't land on the God tier is that it's one of the most expensive monsters to max out. But if you put in the time, Twilight Odin statistically is one of the best commandos in the game. Saz is a great synergist who is surpassed by Purple Chocobo and Yakshini because of his lack of customizability. Omega could probably have landed on the God tier if its setup wasn't so complicated and its movement and attack animations weren't so slow. But if built right by giving it the ATB charge and siphon boost, Omega turns into an absolutely busted mess that sits on the top of the top tier. Alright, let's wrap this up with the God tier. Purple Chocobo is one of the best synergists in the game and will be the best choice when it comes to the late and post game. Dragoon is the cheapest commando to max out and comes with the best abilities in the game like Pharaoh Speed 2, ATB Charge 2, and Armor Breaker. Green Chocobo is the best medic in this title, mainly because it can dish out some decent damage if given the Pharaoh Speed passive. Spamming his Pharaoh Link makes it ideal for monster hunting. Also make sure to infuse it with Asuna and Asunata from Flanator. Commando Lightning is one of the best commandos in the early and mid game. She's also key to getting Rav Lightning early in Chapter 2. She'll be replaced in the late game, but until then, Commando Lightning is absolutely busted. Golden Chocobo is pushed above Commando Lightning for two reasons. One is that if paired with the other Chocobos for the pack mentality bonus, it becomes better. And if you plan on using the Silver Chocobo in battle and not in races, Gold Chocobo is your second best option. Yakshini is the single best synergist for your party. It will be a mainstay until the Purple Chocobo is developed and able to replace it in the endgame. Cloudburst is the single best Ravager in the mid to late game, with one of the best Pharaoh Links in this title, making it indispensable for the majority of your playthrough. Silver Chocobo is in the God tier because it's the best Sentinel in the game, although if you want to build it out, it can nearly rival Sentinels like Snow and Bunker Beast. But the real reason it's here is its Chocobo Racing build, which allows it to become the best Chocobo in the game for the casino. This is important because the casino provides you with some of the best fusion material in the game. Chichu is pretty much broken. Its strength stat can easily be leveled over 1000, making it one of the best commandos in the game. Its only downfall is its inability to damage aerial enemies. Blue Chocobo is without doubt the single best non-DLC Ravager and possibly the single best monster in Final Fantasy XIII 2. The only thing it lacks is the elemental spells, but those can be learned via infusion. And the final member of the God tier and top of this list is Ravager Lightning. Rav Lightning is an absolute god, and once infused with other important monsters will be devastating with wide-hitting AoE attacks and dishing out some of the most damage of any monster in the game. And there you have it, a tier list of the monsters in Final Fantasy XIII 2. If you're trying to figure out the best team for your playthrough, the Chocobos are probably your best bet. A gold, blue, and either green or purple Chocobo will round out your team nicely, and you'll get the Paradigm pack mentality, making this the indisputed best monster pairing in the game. If you want to put some time into it though, Rav Lightning with either a fully built Twilight Odin or Omega alongside something like the purple Chocobo, Jill Nabat, Snow, or Green Chocobo is also an incredibly viable team. And today we'll be taking on what is probably the most difficult tier list to date. I'm talking about rating the Garbs in Lightning Returns Final Fantasy XIII. This is the third installment of the 13 series, and I can already hear the super fans tearing me apart in the comments. I want to make this clear from the onset. When I set out to make these lists, I never claimed that my tiers were definitive. Nothing can ever be definitive when it comes to games because there's always the variable of the player. These tier lists are simply a place to start. I spend a lot of time researching these bad boys and I simply present my findings. Oh, and some bonus lists on the side. Anyway, let's get down to business. There are 71 Garbs you can find in the game. Each will boost Lightning stats and has slots for equipping important active and passive skills as well as complements your overall schema. Oh right, schemas are your custom-built classes, which is a fusion of garbs, weapons, accessories, dormants, shields, and abilities. If all this sounds confusing, then good. We're going to try to consider just the garbs today, though their abilities to create game-breaking schemas cannot be ignored when rating these outfits overall. We're going to do something a little bit different as well. Each tier will not be in any particular order except for the top tier and god tier. Now, without further ado, I give you the tier. We're going to start this list off on a good note by talking about the only thing that we're all going to agree on, and that is that Astrolord is the worst garb in the game, and there just isn't a contest. It has no open skill slots and is mostly a gimmick where the lower your HP falls, the stronger your spells get. Yeah, that's a terrible strategy. The last two garbs on the tier is Pallas Athena and Celestial Body. You can only obtain Pallas Athena after gaining the Platinum Trophy, which is absolutely ridiculous. On top of that, the garb's design is underwhelming and Heroic Guard, in practice, is useless. Celestial Body is only available in Japan and wasn't that great to begin with. Alright, that wraps up the tier. Let's talk about the low tier. As you can imagine, a game with so many garbs is bound to have what we'll call filler. These are just novelties and are surpassed by so many other garbs that we're just going to blaze through this list. Trigger warning, I'm sure you'll see some of your favorites. Mine are on here too. First is Art of War, which was a pre-order bonus. Next is Black Mage, which is obviously a magic DPS garb that gets overshadowed by a lot of other magic DPS garbs. Then we have Black Rose, Blue Mage, Carnival Crusher, Champagne Gold, and Cold Rebellion. Cosmic Crater is a disappointing and confusing DLC garb. Then we have Crimson Bloom, Dangerous Blossom, Dance Macabre, Dark Orchid, Deja Vu, Dragon's Blood, and Duelist. Dust and Shadow gets the block ability and some decent resistance, while Heartstealer is an okayish evasion tank, while Hidden Justice is your average magic garb. Next is Icy White, Ignition, Innocence, La Foldre, Lang Noir, La Automne, La Automne, and Lilitu. Loyal Servant is good for switching out schemas, but it will probably be replaced by Splendid Admiral pretty quick. The Moogle Queen schemata is interesting, but at the end of the day, just kinda stupid. Nocturne is as average a garb as they come, and I can't believe I'm putting this in low tier. Nightmare, one of the coolest looking garbs, is basic trash. Thanks, Square. Next we have Passion Rouge, Primavera, Providence, Red Mage, Sand Fox, and unfortunately School's Out as well. The next few on the list are some rather disappointing DLC garbs. We have Shining Prince, Shogun, Sohei Savior, Tomb Raider, Utsusemi, and again, unfortunately, Sphere Hunter. How Square managed to screw that up, I don't even know. The shield it comes with is nice, but the garb is basic and non-essential. Next, we have Stone and Sand, Sun and Bloom, Ultimatus, Urban Outlaw, Vigilance, Violet Twilight, Water Chorus, White Mage, Witching Hour, and Woodland Walker. The final garb on the low tier is the Paladin, which comes with the awesome Heavy Guard ability, but is easily replaceable with Sacred Knight or Quiet Guardian. Whew! Now let's move to the mid tier, which functions similar to the low tier. These garbs aren't amazing, but they do stand out slightly in some ways. First, we have Candy Raver, which is a middle-of-the-road garb that can slightly boost attack with high HP. Shadow Trooper has the Beatdown ability, which adds to a staggering strategy. By equipping a spirit, you can change Beatdown to Jump, which gives you a ton of raw power. Vengeance also has Beatdown and is similar to Shadow Trooper. Purple Lightning is a great mage garb with incredible speed and stagger capabilities. Flower of Battle is a DLC garb that is used to save time and EP in-game using Metaguard to heal. Of course, we also have the Midgard's Flower Girl garb, which is very similar to Flower of Battle. Intruder is built exclusively for switching schemas. If your ATB is low, it will cast Protect upon switching. Dragoon is another garb with beatdown that can be built into a staggering machine. Its damage output can rival Soldier First Class. Divergence is the absolute best healing garb out there. Its skill Life Regain will heal you if you are damaging an enemy with a debuff. Rhapsody and Rose and Siegfried are pretty devastating DPS garbs that are outclassed in late game. Helter Skelter complements a physical attacking build with its immense boost to strength. Electronica is incredibly useful in early and mid game, but again falls off in late game. And finally, we have Dark Samurai, which again is a standard mid-tier candidate. Okay, we've burned through the fodder. Let's get into the meat of this list with the top tier. First up is Soldier First Class, which can dish out some of the best damage in the game with Slayer, which gains a 2x multiplier to Heavy Slash's power. It's not as good as Soldier of Peace, but still very noteworthy. Splendid Admiral has Transform Faith and Bravery, which will trigger the buffs upon switching schemas. So paired with schemas that complement them, Splendid Admiral and Intruder can be perfect boss killers. Velvet Bouncer is one of the best physical attacking garbs for early and mid game. Its strength is raised by 10% by its auto ability, then Blitz raises it for even further, making it a garb that hits like a truck. Hunter of the Wild is one of the best early and mid game garbs with Heavy Slash ability. It doesn't stay as useful in late game, but can still hold its own. Bold Vanguard has great element resistance and effectiveness, as well as the ability Blitz. Amazon Warrior can break the damage cap while also delivering the fastest basic attacks with Speed Slash. It doesn't compete with Soldier of Peace, but still is a good stand-in since you can get it pretty easy. Dark Knight is another contender for best physical attacking garb in the game. Like the Amazon Warrior and Soldier of Peace, this garb can break the strength limit, while its ability Darkness is a better version of Blitz. Sacred Knight is an incredible physical tank that really only lacks magical resistance, but its skilled defensive strike increases the effectiveness of Heavy Guard and Light Guard. If you have the skills, this garb can negate almost all damage from every enemy in the game. I've read that many argue that Midnight Mauve is one of the best garbs in Lightning Returns. I obviously don't agree, but it still is pretty awesome. With its 100% ATB start and increased spell damage, it can become one of your best mages. Equilibrium, Dark Muse, and Mist Wizard's upgraded versions have the highest starting ATB in the game and great passive skills to carry them into late game. Guardian Corpse and Knight of Etro are two of the most versatile garbs in the game, with 4 open slots and the ability to take them in any direction you'd like. Plus, you just can't go wrong with these callbacks to previous games. Spira's Summoner is almost a must-have DLC. Its element skill is basically broken with a 9.8 times multiplier that will guarantee instant death to almost every enemy in the game. Martial Monk is another strength cap breaker with the skill Whirlwind Kick. If you can get your timing down, Whirlwind Kick is no joke. It has a plus 300% damage multiplier. The final garb of the top tier is the Mikote Dress. Aside from being one of the best looking garbs in the game, Mikote is your designated boss killer. Magic Slash gets a boost from both physical and magical debuffs up to 500%. On top of that, you have the Meta Guard ability that is just incredibly useful for your playthrough. The God tier. Alright, these next 3 garbs are hands down the best in the game and are the optimal garbs for your endgame schemas. First we have Cyber Jumpsuit, which is one of the best debuffers in the game and with the right equipment can absolutely destroy enemy stats and abilities. The only small downside is that Dispel can be highly situational. If it is built as either a physical or magical opposite to Quiet Guardian, these two classes make up a God tier duo. Speaking of Quiet Guardian, it is far superior to Cyber Jumpsuit when it comes to debuffs, though both can potentially have 100% physical or magical resistance. Quiet Guardian is just a little bit more versatile overall. Throw in Heavy Guard skill and you have a devastating Saboteur schema in the making. The final garb on the list, and quite possibly one of the ugliest, is Soldier of Peace. Not sure what they were going with this design. Either way, there isn't a skill in this game that can hit harder than a fully maxed out Artemis arrow. With the right garbs to support it, Soldier of Peace will destroy every single enemy in the game. Well, except for a Reshgal, but whatever. And that's my list. I have this sneaky suspicion that I forgot something somewhere, so let me know in the comments if I left any garbs out. Also, let us know your ideal schemas and favorite outfits down there as well. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you all later. Bonus round, most fashionable lightnings. Number 10, Carnival Crusher. Number 9, Ignition. Number 8, the Moogle Queen. Number 7, Stone and Sand. Number 6, Shadow Trooper. Number 5, Purple Lightning. Number 4, Mist Wizard. Number 3, Violet Twilight. Number 2, Nightmare. And number 1, the Miko dress. Worst character in the game? Still Snow.